Morning. I'm used to saying good morning, but I decided to do office hours in the evening because I think more people are available. So, all right. So if you've never been on one of these office hours before, it's just time for us to kind of get together, hang out a little bit, chat. So tonight, what it's going to look like is I'm going to recap Sunday really quick, and then typically if there's any questions or anything else I want to cover. It's a great time to do that, and then we'll look forward to what the upcoming sermon will be, and then I have a little kind of Q&A section, some questions we've been getting, and specifically about some kids ministry and some different things. We'll go over some of those. I'll answer some questions and whatnot here, and it saves me from having to cover things from the pulpit. So these office hours are helpful for all that. Plus, just gives us a chance to hang out. If you're watching live, feel free to ask a question. Let me see if I can pull that up actually, so I can see chat. Here we go. So feel free to comment a question or comment, and I will see. I think I should be able to see that here and respond to it. So, okay, let's jump in first. Quick recap in case you missed Sunday, or just to actually, you know what? Hold on. Let's really quick. I always like to be paranoid about the audio typically. So not that. Let's do a quick little check and make sure we're good and live on Facebook. Well, we're live. Yeah, there's audio too. Okay, cool. Audio sounds good. All right. Okay, so Sunday we're going through this series through the Bible, and we did. Let's just read the verses. It was. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you furious, and why do you look despondent? If you do what is right, you won't be accepted, or you be accepted. But if you do not do what is right." Sorry, guys. Apparently, the evenings are not the greatest time for me to read. But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. Its desires for you, but you must rule over it. So we talked about that. We talked about. I had that little heart. I should have had it here, but I had that little heart. We talked about how it was hard and your heart getting hard. And, he had a chance to, he was upset, but Cain had a chance to kind of evaluate himself, see what he was doing wrong and improve, or pick up offense and let it turn into sin. We talked about, as Christians, sometimes we're kind of raised like it's bad to be angry, but really the Bible says in your anger, do not sin, not ever be angry. Talk about how Jesus in the temple got angry at God's people being taken advantage of. So yeah, it was a good Sunday service. A lot awesome altar time. And then this next Sunday, so I encourage you to, if you missed, we had a few who were at the races, a few who were just, a couple different places. I know we have a few who some medical stuff too, kind of follow up with you guys. But yeah, I encourage you this Sunday will be a great one to be at. We're going to be talking about, am I my brother's keeper? And kind of the answer to that question, and kind of the result of Cain's hard heart and letting it go that way. And then kind of the answer to that question, am I my brother's keeper? So we're discussing that. Okay, let's tonight might be a little bit of a shorter one. So I did want to get on here. I want to get these going again. I've been trying to do them on Mondays and it just doesn't work for me on Mondays. So I'm thinking maybe if we do these on Wednesdays, might be a little easier. Maybe Wednesday evenings, I come over, do some stuff with the college students for the youth, and then it gives me time to come in here. I can do a quick 20-30 minute. Tonight's will not be that long. I'm actually almost done. I just have one little section to go, or one little segment to go over. And it'll be a great time to, and like I said, when some weeks, this week, it was just really smooth. Sometimes we have questions. People come up and talk to me afterwards. We had a lot of altar time as well, but they'll have questions about the sermon or whatnot. And then this is a great time to kind of dive into those, or I have extra notes that I wasn't able to get into. And then this is a great time to be able to get into some of that. So today, let's wrap up with the last thing. Excuse me a second. Sorry, you probably still heard that. Couple of questions and some about kids church and just kids ministry in general. So something that has been asked quite a bit since we first got here. Sorry. Or just different questions about how we run kids ministry. So first and foremost, let me start off by saying yes, we're here to teach them about the Bible and and whatnot. But like our number one priority is their safety. Obviously, if something happens to a kid, they can't learn. Kind of goes without saying. So our number one is safety. Safety first, right? Because that's going to be, yes, we want to, we're not just babysitting in kids' church. They have their own full-on service in nursery. They have lessons. Yes, it's nursery, so there's snacks and there's playtime, but they're getting a Bible lesson in the nursery as well. They're not just in there being babysat. So that is a big core value, is that they're learning about God, but they can't learn about God if they're hurt or they're not there because they were hurt or something happened. So that has to be first. So when we first got here, one of the first things we talked about was background checks for leaders. And there was a lot of questions about that. Like, well, why would we need background checks? We know all the leaders. They've been doing it for, forever. And it's like, well, background checks, one, it looks good. Two, like it looks good in terms of like a parent. Like, no, we background check all of our leaders. That's a state, like it makes you feel better as a parent. You go to a church and you're like, oh yeah, they background check all their leaders. There's not, well, sister so-and-so, she's been doing it forever. And we, like, obviously we don't think sister so-and-so is going to have something on her background check, but we background check all of them. Also just for the legality reasons, insurance and just, it's the right thing to do. Let's just be honest. It is the right thing to do, is to not have anyone working in there who is not background checked. Obviously the exception are minors. You cannot background check a minor. So, we'll have like my kids, you'll have other kids who will rotate out and do both, mostly nursery. My daughter actually runs our kids program. She's not been background checked because we can't legally background check her. She's not 18. Like you can't do it. It's literally like one of the first questions is, are they, over 18? Like, no. Okay. Well then, sorry, go get references. They're a minor. We can't run a background check. Now, in the terms of her and running the kids ministry, she's licensed to the Assemblies of God through the Called program. So is my son, who is her main, like he helps both her and my wife. So my wife leads kids church for one service. Lily does it for another. And Lily also does it for the Round Mountain campus. She's licensed. Like if I pull out my wallet, I'm not going to do it, but I can pull out my wallet. I can show you my AG minister's license, right? She has a version of that. Hers is through the Called program. So no, the minors don't get background checked, but everyone else, we background check them, interview them, make sure we talk as a staff and leadership, like, hey, what do you think of this person? Will they work? Yeah, cool. They pass background check, but do they have the right temperament? Can they work with kids? So we put a lot of effort into making sure it's a safe environment first, and then it's a fun and yes, fun, but then just a good environment for them, peaceful environment, good environment for the students. In terms of keeping them safe, we have a few policies that have had quite. That was the first one: is why do we have to be background checked to work in the nursery? Number two is the question is, and a lot is like, why can't my kids just run free after church? Like, why do they have to be picked up by the parent that dropped them off? And that, quite frankly, is a safety issue. We probably have actually gotten more questions about this one. There's three things I want to talk about today. So this one it's a safety issue. One, like, I know, okay, small church, small town. Oh, when kids church is over, you just open the doors and the kids all run out. There's so many problems with that, from just you come to get your kid and you don't know where they are, your kid running amok, right? Like running around and, causing property damage, or, getting into things they shouldn't be getting in, or, running outside. And now they're in the parking lot and they're running around the parking lot. They're running down the street. Oh, let me just, whatever. They're kids, right? Who knows what they get in their heads. So there's a safety issue. There's also just, just to be totally honest, there's like the public nuisance issue. Like, no one wants to be hanging out after church, talking, fellowshipping with others, and there's a bunch of crazy kids around. I know this because I was one of those crazy kids, and people didn't like it. I was running around. I'd get away from my parents. I'd get in trouble. I'd get caught, and I'd get in trouble, but it never stopped me from trying, right? Running around, being all crazy. And then my parents would be like, get back here. Sorry, I'm just making sure this isn't too loud. It looks like I'm running a little hot, but so that's another issue. Like, or a lot of times there's serious conversations, counseling conversations, prayer happening. We don't want kids running around and being crazy. So the idea is we're checking them out to you, and you are now going to make sure that they are behaving, right? They're not running up on the stage. They're not running around the sanctuary as people are still trying to pray, or, like praying for each other, running outside and endangering themselves as cars are pulling in and out of the parking lot and the road and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's another reason. Another reason is just, as it's 2024. It's not 1964. Like, congratulations, you're a parent. That doesn't mean that you even have, like, just because you walk up to the doors and say, "Oh, I'm the parent." We don't know you. You didn't drop them off. How do we know there's not some sort of custody battle? We had this issue several months ago in the nursery where a dad of a child showed up, or from the nursery worker's perspective, just a man that they'd never seen before, has never attended the church, never seen before, showed up and tried to take a kid. And our nursery worker, rightly so, was like, "Yeah, no, you're not taking a kid." It's like, "Oh, I'm their dad." It's like, "I don't know that. We don't know who you are. We don't know." And even if you are the dad, like, there could be a custody battle. There's literally, churches have been sued because there's been kidnapping cases because a parent showed up. There's a custody issue that the dad or the mom has no legal custody of the children, cannot see unsupervised see the children, showed up to a nursery, said, "Hey, I'm their dad," took them, and then literally took them. That's by law, that's called kidnapping. I know you're, "Well, it's my kid." That's called kidnapping. When the court says you have to have supervised, right? So that's another common issue. Well, okay, yeah, we get that, Pastor Jared, but again, this is a small town. We all know each other. You should know if like, why can't my kid just be like let go? This is another one. Okay, having a sibling or someone else. Well, our family. I know your family, and the main kids church worker is going to probably know your family. This doesn't mean all the leaders know the family. As we train up and sub in new, so you come up and you're like, or someone comes up and says, so like, say you drop your kid off as a parent. Okay, this is who dropped them off. Someone else comes up and says, "Oh, I'm a cousin, I'm a niece, I'm a nephew, I'm an uncle, aunt, older sibling, parent who wasn't dropping them off." And they're like, "Okay, you didn't drop them off. I don't know who you are." And it's like, "Oh yeah, I'm big brother. I'm Uncle so and so. I'm grandma, right?" Everyone knows me here. "Oh, okay. Well, I guess it's fine then." And come to find out, well, first off, that's exactly what someone trying to take a kid would say, right? So just because one week the worker knows who you are doesn't mean they always would. And it has to be, if it's a policy, it's a policy. Okay. So you're like, "Yeah, but why not when, or why not for us?" Okay. So first off, it's a policy, it's a policy. It's not a policy if it only works sometimes, right? And then we have someone new. Now they're getting yelled at because it's like, well, and I remember when I was at Hollywood Video, this would happen is we have regulars and they'd come in a time that they weren't normally in, or someone would pick up a shift and they were working when they weren't normally working, and the people would get belligerent, and we'd say, "Oh, can I get your I need to, your account. Can I get your card? Can your name?" "Oh, everyone here knows me." Clearly I don't. Never seen you before. This is why I'm asking for your information to get in your account. Everyone here knows me. This is ridiculous. How come you can't just check them out really quick? Why everyone else just does that? Sir, I don't know who you are. Like, I normally work the evenings. This is the middle of the day. I covered for someone. The fact that you don't recognize me, shouldn't that, same kind of thing is then our someone else can get her out, right? So it's a policy for a reason, right? It's across the board. And then also it's across the board. So it's like, oh, that's fine for other families, but our family should be the exception. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with my throat here. Our family should be the exception. Well, everyone thinks they should be the exception. So again, if it's a policy, it's a policy. Otherwise, it's just something we do sometimes. So that's the idea behind that. Okay, so we get a lot of flack on that. So we're not a lot of flack, but we get asked about that quite a bit. So just kind of going on with this isn't the third thing I want to talk about. Let me just say for the record, and hopefully I don't have to say this from the pulpit, but it clears us up. It is never okay to yell at a leader or a volunteer, right? Just not cool. Like, I get if you disagree with something, but it is never okay. And it's been brought to my attention recently that, and no one's yelled, so I don't think this has happened. But like sometimes, like a few times in the last year, it has happened to where you don't like a policy or something, and then there's been arguing. Like that's not really great to like be arguing with the leaders. Like they, for one thing, they didn't make that policy and they can't change it. So arguing with them just makes it harder for them to do their ministry. Like they're just trying to sit there, they're just volunteering their time, and they're getting harassed. Like that's that's a good way to not have volunteers. This is why a lot of churches are like, oh, we don't have kids church today because we don't have a volunteer, and it's because the volunteers just get chewed through, right? So we want to make sure we consistently have kids church and nursery every single service, every single week. And if we're always losing them because it's like, oh yeah, it's just you get beat up every single week, I don't want to volunteer for this. I'm gonna go join the media team. My only pastor is yelling at me. I use the term yelling very loosely. Okay, I don't literally mean raising your voice yelling. I've never yelled at the media team here. Maybe in New York. I have to think about that. I don't know. That's a good one though. During the pandemic was pretty stressful. It's like, well, no, because you have to. When you're the producer, it's like cut to camera one, and then if they're they're not paying attention, like cut to camera one, right? Okay, so I have yelled at a media team before, but not here. We only have 2 cameras. It's a lot easier. So with that, it's never cool to like harass. Same thing, guys. This is just a life lesson. It's not just the church and volunteers. At the grocery store, like don't yell at people. Don't give people a piece of your mind. You know what they say? Like don't give people a piece of your mind. You don't have enough as it is, right? Okay, not my words. I'm just repeating that. But that's how it feels sometimes. Like if you're in public and you're like trying to give someone a piece of your mind, it leads people to think that like not a whole lot there, right? Like it's just not, it's not okay. Okay. It's like whether you're at the dollar store, you're at, Ridley's, in Round Mountain, the landing zone or the grocery store. Isn't it literally called the grocery? Anyways, like, yes, they're not volunteers. They're working as their job, but like, let's just be courteous. Okay. Like someone has a policy or someone does something you don't like, doesn't mean we need to be yelling at them. We don't need to be arguing with them. I get if it's like there's exceptions to this rule, but overall, like if you don't like something in the kids ministry, come talk to me or Tristan or like Rebecca. Don't do it on a Sunday, okay? Like we're busy, we're running services. If you genuinely have a concern with something, call the office and set up a meeting, and whoever is appropriate for it to be. If it's kids church, it's going to be with Brandy. If it's something with the service, it's going to be me. If it's going to be nursery, it's going to probably be Brandy and Rebecca, because Brandy's kind of over all the ministries and Rebecca's over the nursery. Don't go up and argue afterwards on the Sunday about something. It's just not a good idea, okay? And so we get this a lot, and my leaders, same thing for youth. I haven't really talked about youth as much because Tristan knows how to handle himself, but same thing. There was a season. We're past it, but there was a season where Tristan was just getting hammered every week by parents. I never said anything, but just by parents who just wanted to complain or had of this or had of that, right? Different things. It's a youth service. Kids are in the altar. They're worshiping. Like, right? Let's not make it hard. There's a scripture there's a verse in the Bible that basically says, I'm going to highly paraphrase it here. We're just with the college students, we're talking about paraphrasing and putting things in your own words and transliteration versus, and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to hit this somewhere between, no, it's not even close to transliteration. It's going to literally be a paraphrase, but it basically says like, hey, don't make it like a burden for the ministers to minister to you. Like, don't make it a burden on them. So let's not do that, especially to our volunteers, especially to our kids' church workers, our youth workers. These are people who are volunteering their time to work with your children, youth, kids, babies. Like, if there's an actual issue or concern, like schedule something. Tristan doesn't need to be having, being grilled in the parking lot about why they do something in youth. Probably the answer is if it's something you don't like, it's probably because I told him to do it. Like, so really the conversation is probably with me, and he's too courteous to say, well, pastor said this is how we have to do this. He's going to just take the hits and then probably never even tell me. Right. So let's just be cool to our volunteers. Okay. Same thing for, like if someone's greeting and you don't like something about a bathroom, don't go tell a greeter or an usher, like, I really, your bathroom is that, or your front of this. They're removed from that. They're just a volunteer trying to make your Sunday better. Let's not beat them up for it. Okay. I think we covered all. Okay. Last thing with kind of kids ministry, youth ministry, nursery. I think this has happened for all three of them, but we get asked this one a lot. This is probably the number one question. I don't know why I saved it for last. Probably the number one question we get asked in kids ministry is, hey, that's really cool that you guys have like spent a lot of time figuring out the best cutoffs for the different things / managing that with the resources of the church. Like, we're not a giant church that can have literally every grade have its own class. And that you've looked at, other churches, read books, seminars, gone to extensive training in Arizona with the Dream City Church, all these things to research kids ministry and how best to do it at the level we're at. That's super cool. I totally respect that. But my kid's special. Those rules don't apply to them. There's a reason we have different age groups. And so the question we get asked the most is, cool, but my kid is special because. So can they jump a grade? Can they jump to something else? This is most common. This happens sometimes with nursery going into kids' church, but this is most common for fifth graders who think that they should be in youth. They're too cool for kids' church. And so, they tell the parents, and the parents are like, yeah, my kid's smart. My kid's mature. Everyone thinks their kid is smarter and more mature than everyone else, right? It's just statistically not possible that everyone's is, but everyone thinks their kid is smart. I think my kids are smarter and more mature than other kids. Everyone thinks their kids are smarter and more mature. It's like my students, the honor roll bumper sticker, right? We all like to put our kids on pedestals. No, your fifth grader cannot go into youth a year early. No, we can't make special allowances. First off, if you think that like you're the only one, you're like, no, just make this one. No, literally almost everyone asks this. It's like a rite of passage. The fact that if a kid isn't able to wait that extra year to go to youth, it's kind of proof they're not ready for youth as it is. But there's a lot of reasons. And if you'd like to know them, yes, let me know. We'll schedule a meeting. There's a lot of things, a lot of psychology and behavioral science of why it is the way it is, and just experience when we've seen it not done that way of how bad it goes. So that is probably the number one question is, can my fifth grader go into youth early? And sometimes and I don't even know the ages, to be honest, can my nursery kid go into, I think it's 5, or is it great? Anyways, those are set up for specific reasons, and it's for the benefit of your child. It would actually not be great for your child. We actually had something relatively recently where someone was asking, not rudely or anything, that, politely, but like asking, and then realized, oh, okay. Then they saw something happen. Like, oh, I see why makes sense. My kid should be in kids' church. So yeah. And then again, it's not the individual leaders. So like if you're dropping your kid off, that is not the time to be like badgering the leader. Hey, I really think you should let my kid in here. They don't even have control over it. They're just like that poor worker, like you see on the sitcom, who's just there like, lady, I just work here. And they're like getting beat up. Like they cannot let your kid in anyways. And so like, again, that goes back to like, it's not cool really anywhere, but specifically for like volunteers to just beat up on them because you think that you should be made an exception. Your family, your kid is I know this is cool, but just come on, you know me. Come on, my kid is, and they're bored in there, right? The reason they're bored is because they're not, and I could go into this way deeper. Like if they're bored in there, if they're not able to sit and behave in kids' church, they're going to have a really hard time in youth. There's a lot. I know it seems like it's so much fun and they have a lot more structure. They sit quietly through a lot more. So if they can't make it through kids' church, they definitely can't make it through youth. They just see the games and the candy and they want to go, right? And then also there's like, I don't want to be with the babies anymore. I want to be with the big kids. But then the big kids are like, yeah, we don't want that baby to come in here. You know what I mean? I'm being very, very loose with my terminology, so don't be offended by it. I'm just giving that example. The same way, right? So they need to be ready. I think that about wraps it up. So hopefully none of that was too harsh. Like I said, wanted to cover on here and not from a pulpit. Just these are questions we get asked quite a bit. And then some of my leaders have let me know these questions have been coming up a lot lately. I didn't realize it because I don't run these ministries. I'm in the sermon preaching. and like in the altar with people, I'm like, everything's perfect. And they're like, hey, we're kind of getting harassed, or we're getting asked this a lot, or this person really thinks this. And so I just wanted to kind of address some of it, just because it's not like you guys are, you just have questions. You're like, it's not like you think it's a dumb rule. You're just like, I don't understand why. Can you explain it to me? And it's my job to explain it. Not really the volunteer who gets scheduled once a month to have to explain our entire system of why we run kids and youth ministry the way we do. They don't know. And so I thought I would take some time and explain those. So if you have any other questions, or, let me know. Like I said, if you ever have questions about how we do anything, feel free to schedule time. We'll meet with you. I'll take you to lunch. We'll go to dinner, whatever. We can talk. We can go through things, whatever it may be. But yeah, most of the time, the actual volunteer running it that week probably doesn't know. And let's be kind and courteous to them. In the same way, you wouldn't want me to come into your job in the middle of the week and be like, hey, why'd you miss church on Sunday? If you really love God, you'd be at church. Like, and look, here, I got your tithing record, and you've missed a few times this year. Like, what's going on? Like, okay, let's sit down right now and discuss this. And then your boss is looking at you, and you're like, I don't know, right? Like, that wouldn't be very courteous, right? In the same way, like, it's not cool to attack or even really just ask. Like, again, Sundays is not a time to ask people running ministry. Those, like, little things, yes. Like, asking a greeter, where's the restroom? Where's the kids ministry? What they're at this age, where do they go? Little things like that. But like, hey, why do you run it this way? I think you should run it this way. Those are a midweek. That's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Call the office and set up a meeting with the appropriate people. Not really on a Sunday type thing. I joke, and I've said this from the pulpit. If I agree to anything on a Sunday, it is not binding. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, oh. And then later I'm like, people be like, oh, pastor said. I'm like, I never said that. And so yeah, Sundays are not a great time to like try to have a conversation about like, hey, can you put me in charge of this position? Can you change this policy? Sunday's not a good time. You're either going to feel blown off because it's like, oh, okay, well, let's talk about why don't you call the office? And you're going to feel like, oh, he just blew me off. Or I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll think about that. And I've had that happen where I say, well, I'll think about that, because I'm like, I'm not going to have that conversation right now. A lot of times it's like, you just don't understand why we can't do that. And I can't go into it right now because we're in the middle of services. And so I'm like, well, let me, I'll think about that. Or, I'll reach out to you this week. And then I hear a couple days later, someone called the church and said, pastor said, we're going to do this. And I'm like, no, that's not what it is. So hopefully all that clears all that up. I know this was a lot more like, but we haven't had an office hours in a while. So next week should be much more fun. And we'll get into some more fun stuff. And I have some ideas for what we can do with office hours to make it cool, a little cooler, kind of hangout wise. Not cooler, you know what I mean? More of like, interactive, some fun. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm talking too much. And I got to go. I got a 6 o'clock. I got to get to. So at the risk of sounding like the former mayor of New York, I need to get back to work. Have a great day. I don't remember how to stop this. There it is. Okay. Have a great day.